I'm TS, and let's talk about the history of hair metal. The way I like to break it down in my mind, and give you a list of some of the bands that I put in each category. And if you have any comments or know what you're talking about, leave me a comment down below and we'll talk about it. If I've left anybody out of any of these lists, obviously it can never be a concise version. There was hundreds and hundreds of bands over the course of the decade and beyond. But let's start with the forefathers of hard rock and heavy metal. Would be obviously the Black Sabbaths, Deep Purple. You could throw the Who into that category. Let's see, American bands. You could probably say Grand Funk and Blue Oyster Cult was a big one. I think there was a huge tour that they did with Black Sabbath in the 70s. Without going into all of the prog bands, obviously you have your King Crimson and Yes and Genesis and all those bands. But just as a formation of the hair metal type of stuff, I would say that's the two top dogs are definitely Black Sabbath and Deep Purple. That led into middle 70s ish and beyond, and obviously you had all the glam influences, the David Bowie and T-Rex and Sweet and Slade and all those kind of bands. But the real mainstream stuff, obviously, as far as hair metal and glam metal, your Van Halen would be number one, and Kiss. Van Halen and Kiss were like owned the late part of the 70s there. But you also had Aerosmith and AC/DC. Judas Priest, Iron Maiden were both right around that time, sort of, kind of coming up around in all of that. Then I would say we get into what I would call the first wave of hair metal. Nobody called it that then. That was a term that was invented like after the effect, I'm pretty sure, and it came to define all that stuff. I hate using that term, but first wave of hair metal, I would put bands like Dio and Ozzy, who both had been in 70s pre-hair bands, but they'd forged out on their own, and they were sort of, even though there was legends in the group, they were sort of up and coming at the same time. All of the major bands from the pre-hair band era were having their second wave, and they were kind of the elder statesmen. Aerosmith and AC/DC and all those bands were touring through that middle period, giving a lot of the newer bands to tour with, and kind of reinvigorated the whole thing. It kind of fed on itself. But the first wave, Dokken and Motley Crue, and can't really think of very many other ones from the first wave, but those were the big ones. All those Sunset Strip bands were just starting about then. The second wave is where it really gets crazy. It's in that 86, 87, 88 period. I feel it's the pinnacle of that whole time period. In hindsight, a lot of that stuff just ended up being too silly. The second wave included bands like Guns N' Roses and Poison and Bon Jovi, who had been around for a while, but that was like their period of being biggest band in the world. Tesla is from that time period. That's probably my favorite band out of all of those bands, even though they don't really fit that actual definition of glam metal or hair band. The third wave, 89, 90-ish, right before the fall, you got bands like Skid Row and Warrant and Slaughter and Firehouse, and honestly, to me, a lot of the more cheesy ones were later. Obviously, it was about time for a turning, and we all know how that played out. But anyway, if you guys can think of any other bands that you remember or that you liked or thought were cheesy or funny, leave me a comment down below. Let's talk about it. See you later.